Are you looking for the best mirrorless camera? In this video we will look at some of the 7 best mirrorless camera on the market. Before we get started with our video, we have included links in the description. So make sure you check those out to see which one is in your budget range. Starting at number 1. Sony A7 IV Camera. Sony's new A7 IV 910 Wired recommends is a 33-megapixel full-frame camera capable of incredibly sharp images, with excellent dynamic range and the best autofocus system on the market. It's compact and lightweight enough to carry all day without back strain, and the grip is comfortable. The 5-axis image stabilization means you can handhold it in lower light, and the wide range of 4K video options make it the best all-around photo and stills combo on this page. There are better still cameras, see the Sony A7R IV below, and better video cameras, but nothing else combines the two quite as well. What I don't like about it, or any other Sony, is the labyrinthine menu system. Luckily, there are enough customizable buttons that it's not too difficult to set things up, so you never need to dive into the menu specs. 33-megapixel full-frame sensor, 10 frames per second, FPS, 7K oversampled 4K/30 FPS video, SD and express cards. Number 2. Fujifilm XT4 Camera. Fujifilm's XT4 is one of the best values in the camera market. Fujifilm uses APS-C sensors, which are smaller than the full-frame sensors in the rest of the cameras in this guide, but the images are every bit as sharp. The XT4 has in-body image stabilization and significant autofocus improvements compared to its predecessor. There's also a clear division between photo and video mode, so you can easily switch back and forth. The XT4 even offers a fully articulating rear touchscreen, something you won't find in either of the Sony cameras. The camera body's design is reminiscent of film cameras, and perhaps the best thing about it is how seldom you need to use digital controls. ISO, shutter speed, exposure compensation, and shooting modes are all accessible via physical dials. Plus, Fujifilm's excellent line of lenses is surprisingly affordable relative to some of the others on the list, making this one of the least expensive systems to invest in. My only real gripe is the grip. It's on the small side for a body of this size. Specs: 26-megapixel X-Trans APS-C sensor, 15 frames per second with full AF, 4K/60 FPS video, dual SD cards. Number 3. Sony A7R IV. Sony's A7R IV uses a 61-megapixel full-frame sensor. From a pure resolution standpoint, it is unmatched, unless you opt for medium-format cameras. If that's not enough, there's a 16-shot high-resolution mode that can create 240MP images, so long as your subject is static, example, a landscape. The dynamic range is outstanding, and the ability to recover detail in the shadows is something you'll only believe once you do it yourself. I was able to pull up shadows in my RAW editor by as much as 5 stops with no more noise than if I had shot at the corresponding ISO in the first place. While the still images the A7R IV produces are frankly remarkable, its video chops are not of the same caliber. That's not to say its specs are bad, but there are more capable video cameras if that's your focus. Other downsides are its price, and its RAW files are huge, around 125 megabytes per image. If you buy one, pick up some extra hard drives too. Specs: 61-megapixel full-frame sensor, 10 frames per second with full AF, 12-bit RAM, 6 frames per second for 14-bit RAW, 4K/30 FPS video, dual SD cards. Number 4. Nikon Z6 II. The Nikon Z6 II is Nikon's answer to the Sony A7 III, and it is a good answer for dedicated Nikon shooters. The 24-megapixel full-frame sensor has excellent dynamic range, and the phase detect autofocus system is one of the best I've used. Video quality is also excellent, with 10-bit 4:2:2 N-Log output possible over HDMI. The Nikon Z6 II is also the most comfortable camera to hold on this list. Although this will depend somewhat on the size of your hands, the grip is larger and more generously spaced than on the Sony or Fujifilm cameras. The Z-series lens system is intriguing for its wider base mount, which allows more light to the corners of the sensors. The benefits of this can be seen in the incredibly fast 58mm f/0.95 lens, manual focus, and also the surprisingly small 50mm f/1.2. If you've got a lot of legacy Nikon glass you want to keep using, there's an F to Z mount adapter available for $250. The only thing I don't like is the strange dual card system that supports two different types of storage cards. Specs: 24 megapixel full frame sensor, 12 frames per second with full AF, 4K/30 FPS video, XQD/CF Express, Type B, and SD card slot. Number 5. Canon EOS-R. The Canon EOS-R is a mirrorless option for people who love their DSLRs. It's a hefty beast, with a solid feel that reminds me of what I used to love about film cameras. Even the on-off switch is made of metal. The sensor is typically Canon, which is to say sharp, with good contrast and the characteristic Canon color rendering. It's slightly warmer in tone than some of the others here. The phase detect autofocus is fast and accurate. One thing I really like is when you change lenses, there's a cover that swings out to protect the sensor from dust. The exception is if you have an adapter and you remove the lens, but not the adapter. Every camera on this list would benefit from adopting this feature. The R-mount lens system uses a very wide base diameter, like the Nikon system, and achieves similar results. There are faster lenses around. The better news for those already invested in Canon glass is that there's a $99 adapter that will let you affix just about any older Canon glass to the R. Specs: 30 megapixel full frame sensor, 8 frames per second with autofocus, 4K/30 FPS video, dual SD card slots. Number 6. Panasonic Lumix DC-S5. Panasonic's S5 is a compact full-frame mirrorless with a very sharp 24 megapixel sensor. The S5 mostly holds its own against the rest of these full-frame cameras in still image quality, but what really sets it apart is the extra video features you won't find elsewhere: support for vlog recording, anamorphic 4K support, and uncropped 4K at 30 frames per second top the list. The result is a camera that's perfect for hybrid video and still shooters. The S5 uses the L-mount lens system, an effort to do for full-frame what Panasonic did for micro four thirds: create a unified lens mount standard. Leica is the driving force behind the L-mount, but Panasonic and Sigma also have plenty of glass in L-mount. That means there's no shortage of lenses for the S5. The biggest shortcoming is the autofocus. Like the bigger S1, there's no phase detection, and the camera relies on a contrast-based detection system, which is slower and less accurate. If your primary use case is video, be sure to check out our guide to the gear and tips you need to make studio-grade home videos. Specs: 24 megapixel full frame sensor, no AA filter, 5 frames per second with autofocus, 4K/30 FPS video, dual SD card slots. Number 7. Fujifilm X-E4. I have not tested this brand new Fujifilm camera, but it has the same sensor as the X-T4 above, and the body is very similar to the XE3. So I feel safe saying that the extremely compact X-E4 is very nice to travel with. It has 90% of what the XT4 offers, which makes it easier to say what you don't get. There's no in-body image stabilization, the viewfinder is smaller and not as high resolution, the LCD tilts but isn't fully articulated, and the body isn't weather-sealed. This last is a sore point. Frankly, there's no excuse for not adding full weather sealing in a camera that so obviously calls to be in your hand at all times. Still, if you can get by without it, this is a very capable yet compact camera. Read our best compact cameras guide for other options. Stock at retailers has been fluctuating quite a bit. If it's sold out, check back later. Specs: 26 megapixel X-Trans APS-C sensor, 8 frames per second with autofocus, 4K/30 FPS video, single SD card slot.